Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stacy. This is going to be my November reading wrap up. My dog wants to be in my face right now. I'm in a different room than I normally am because the day got away from me and it's actually quite dark outside. It doesn't look that dark in that window in this camera, but it's pretty dark and the lighting in my living room is terrible. And the lighting in the dining room is way better. So apparently I can film in here in the evening and I didn't know it. So with that being said, let's get into the books that I read in November. The first book that I read was The Hidden Prince by Tessa Afshar, which is a book that I have been wanting to read ever since I heard it was a thing. So this book just came out in the month of November and I rarely ever read new books. I'm always reading old books or books I pick up at the thrift store or books I get super cheap on the Kindle. But this one, I actually requested that my library buy it so I could borrow it, and they did. So I was able to get the book on the day that it came out. And I'm so glad about that because this book ended up being phenomenal, which was not surprising. I love Tessa Afshar. I've read maybe 4 or 5 of her books. I haven't read every single one, but I've read a good amount of them and I have loved every single one. And this book, The Hidden Prince, was set in Persia at the time of when the Jews had been captured and taken to Babylon. And there is a young woman who ends up working in the household of Daniel from, Daniel and the Lion's Den. She ends up being like a scribe for him, helping him out with writing things. Okay, I don't know if everything is in the same position. I just got a package delivered and the UPS guy was just looking in the window as I was sitting here talking, so that was awkward. Anyway, what was I talking about? The main character ends up living with Daniel in his household and working for him, and he ends up sending her to school, kind of, and so she grows up with Daniel's son and Daniel's son's best friend. And then something horribly tragic happens and she ends up having to be on the run. So she ends up in Persia and ends up taking care of a little boy. And that's basically all I can say because it is like a mystery. But this book made me cry. This book made me laugh. This book had a great romance. The biblical faith elements of it were outstanding. I love Daniel. He's one of my favorite people in the Bibles. Even though he wasn't the main focus or the main character of this book, I loved the characters. I was rooting for everybody. It was so, so good. The next one I read was Because of Miriam at Miriam Elizabeth Reads. I'll leave her link down below. You have to watch her. She's amazing. But she had talked about The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss in October. She had said that it was a great book to read in the fall, especially November, and I'm a very seasonal reader, so I kind of on a whim decided to go ahead and give it a try. My husband's been trying to get me to read this series for years and I've had no interest in it whatsoever, but as soon as Miriam mentioned that it's very fall-like, I was on it. So I picked this book up even though fantasy in general isn't my favorite thing. I'm really particular when it comes to fantasy. I prefer to watch it than read it because I can have a hard time visualizing fantastical elements. But this book was fantasy light, I would say. To me, it read more like a historical fiction novel with a few little elements thrown in. It's about a man who is, I would say, kind of like the Witcher character, if you know the Witcher TV show or the books or the video game. He's kind of like a warrior hero type of guy, but now he is trying to live a simple life and he owns an inn, and a character named the Chronicler comes into the inn after hunting the main character down, and he wants to basically write the main character's life story. So the majority of the book is him kind of reliving his childhood. He was an orphan who wanted to go to this alchemy school, magic school, sorcery school. I don't know the exact name for it, but again, it was very light on all the magic stuff. Miriam was completely right by saying this is a great book to read in the fall. It does take place in the fall when the man is in the inn retelling his story. That's in the fall. And the school setting makes it feel very fall-like. The main character also reminded me a lot of my husband. They had very similar upbringings and very similar personalities, even though my husband did not go to magic school. But it just reminded me so much of him, and I could kind of picture my husband as a kid or as a teenager, because I knew him when he was a teenager. I could like imagine him in place of the character in the story, so that just made it even better for me. Anyway, I loved it, and I will definitely be reading the next book. And then I think there's like a novella book that goes with it, and everybody in the world is waiting for book 3 to come out, and that's been on hold for a long time, but hopefully it comes out soon because I want to read all of it. Next one I read was Wings of the Wind by Connilyn Cossette, and this is another biblical fiction book. This is book 3 in the Out of Egypt series. And again, Connilyn Cossette kind of knocks it out of the park. She's just as good as Tessa Afshar, in my opinion. They are my two favorite biblical fiction authors. I can't say a whole lot about this one. This one takes place at the very tail end of the 40 years in the desert. And there was a surprise biblical character that showed up in this book that I wasn't expecting. So I really thought that was cool how that played out. I don't want to say anything, but yeah, there's not a whole lot I can say about this book other than Connilyn Cossette's writing is amazing. The faith elements in her book is awesome. I always learn a lot, and I really recommend it. The next one was Christmas at Baskerville Hall, a Sherlock and Lucy short story written by Anna Elliot and Charles Veley, I think is how you say his name. This was a Sherlock novella written by people other than Arthur Conan Doyle. This one was perfect for Sherlock fans and perfect for Christmas time. Like the title says, it takes place at Baskerville Hall. It was a little bit confusing for me to follow because it's part of a quite large series, and there are characters in this series that I've never heard of, and I didn't really understand how they were all related. There's a character named Lucy who's a grown woman and she's married, and she was saying that she was Sherlock's daughter, but then she would call him Sherlock. So I was a bit confused of how that whole dynamic plays out or how it came about because I haven't read the other books in the series. But besides that, the actual mystery and story I thought was really well done. So far, I've been really impressed by all the Sherlock stories that I have read that are kind of spin-offs or written by other authors. So yeah, I like this one. It was short and it was festive. Then I read Once Upon a Dickens Christmas by Michelle Griep, and she's been kind of a mixed bag for me. I read The House at the End of the Moor, I think was the name of it, and I loved that one. And then I read Lost in Darkness and did not like that one so much. And this book was actually a collection of 3 stories. It was 12 Days at Bleakley Manor, which I liked a lot. I think the first story was the best one in the book. And then there was A Tale of Two Hearts, which I liked. And the last story was The Old Lace Shop, which I probably liked the least. So it started out the best and then it kind of went down. But 12 Days at Bleakley Manor, I think was really good and very festive, very Christmassy. All 3 of them had great faith content in them. And they were all kind of related to each other. One of the main themes in all of them was a second chance coin. So it's this special gold coin that you give to somebody that means that they deserve a second chance, like a shot at redemption. So I thought that was really interesting. The first story, 12 Days at Bleakley Manor, has a really good mystery. I really enjoyed the whole mystery aspect. It's a bunch of strangers that get invites to this manor, and while they're there, accidents start happening, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So I thought that was a lot of fun. I think you can get each of these books separately. I think I've seen them all separately. So if you're not interested in one of the stories, you don't have to get this book. You can just pick up one of them in particular. But yeah, I especially liked 12 Days at Bleakley Manor. I thought that was really good. And the last book I'm going to talk about, and this book took me all month long. This is the first book that I started in November, and I finished it today, which is December 1st. But it is Fawkes by Nadine Brandes. This one was our group read for the Christian book club. It is a historical fantasy story, which I have realized I'm not the biggest fan of. I love historical fiction and I like fantasy, but I'm very particular about fantasy because I have a hard time visualizing it. But I don't think I'm a fan of putting the two together, because when you put them together, then I find it just completely unbelievable. Especially if it's a historical fiction story that is based off a real event that I already know. So Fawkes is based off the Guy Fawkes gunpowder plot, which is a real event, and I know that story. And so as I was reading this fictional fantastical account, I just could not get into it. I just could not believe it. And also, I did not understand the magic system whatsoever, and I feel like it was very magic heavy. That was a major part of the plot. So the magic is based off of color and mask, and there's also a stone plague going around. And I didn't understand the stone plague either. I didn't get how that and the magic and the gunpowder plot, how all of that stuff kind of mixed together. There was a lot in this book. There was a lot happening, and I just felt lost for the majority of the time. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of November. Very much looking forward to all of the fun reads in December. I hope y'all are having a great day, and I will see y'all soon. Bye.